Governance and leadership. Governance and leadership are central to the success or failure of nations. Throughout history, effective governance has played a key role in fostering national prosperity, while poor governance has often led to economic decline, internal strife, and eventual collapse. We will explore the critical importance of good governance, examines the characteristics of strong versus weak leadership, and provides case studies from both successful empires and failed states to illustrate how leadership shapes a nation's destiny. The importance of effective governance for national prosperity. Effective governance is the backbone of any thriving nation. It involves the establishment of institutions that maintain law and order, ensure economic stability, protect citizens' rights, and promote social welfare. Good governance creates an environment where citizens and businesses can prosper by enforcing the rule of law, providing reliable public services, and fostering transparency and accountability. Nations with strong governance tend to have stable economies, higher standards of living, and resilient social structures. For example, countries like Sweden and Singapore are often cited as models of effective governance. Sweden's social democratic model balances capitalism with extensive welfare programs, ensuring that citizens benefit from both economic growth and a robust social safety net. Singapore, under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, transformed from a small, resource-poor nation into a global financial hub by emphasizing meritocracy, anti-corruption policies, and long-term strategic planning. On the other hand, poor governance, marked by corruption, inefficiency, and weak institutions, undermines a nation's potential. Without effective governance, even resource-rich nations can experience stagnation, inequality, and conflict. In such states, the lack of institutional integrity erodes public trust, discourages foreign investment, and often leads to political instability. Characteristics of strong leadership versus poor governance. Strong leadership is defined by vision, decisiveness, integrity, and the ability to inspire and unite a nation. A good leader not only sets a clear direction for the country but also works to strengthen institutions, promote fairness, and ensure long-term prosperity. Leaders like Franklin D. Roosevelt, who guided the United States through the Great Depression and World War II, exhibited these qualities. His leadership was marked by bold economic policies, like the New Deal, and strategic alliances that strengthened both the domestic economy and the nation's global standing. Strong leaders often embrace adaptability and long-term thinking. For instance, Emperor Meiji of Japan modernized his country during the Meiji Restoration, transforming Japan from a feudal state into an industrialized power. Meiji's ability to integrate Western technology and governance practices while preserving Japanese traditions helped the nation rise rapidly on the global stage. In contrast, poor governance is often a byproduct of weak or corrupt leadership. Leaders who prioritize personal gain over national interest, fail to enforce laws equitably, or suppress dissent usually drive their countries toward economic and social collapse. For example, the regime of Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe initially began with promise but later devolved into authoritarianism and economic mismanagement. Mugabe's policies, including land seizures and hyperinflationary money printing, crippled Zimbabwe's economy and left the nation in a state of chronic instability. Poor leadership is also marked by short-term thinking and failure to respond to emerging challenges. In some cases, leaders remain in power by exploiting fear, division, or populism, weakening the very institutions necessary for the country's long-term stability. These governance failures can have devastating effects, from widespread poverty to violent conflict. Leadership case studies, successful empires and failed states throughout history. Strong leadership has often been the deciding factor in the success of empires. The Roman Empire, for example, flourished under leaders like Augustus Caesar, who ushered in the Pax Romana, a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Augustus reformed the military, developed infrastructure, and established a stable currency, all of which contributed to Rome's lasting legacy. His leadership set the foundation for a vast empire that endured for centuries. Similarly, the British Empire reached its zenith under the leadership of Queen Victoria and Prime Minister William Gladstone, among others. Through a combination of military prowess, industrial innovation, and diplomatic skill, Britain became the world's foremost superpower by the 19th century. British leaders effectively managed a complex global empire, promoting economic growth and consolidating political influence through careful governance. In contrast, poor leadership has been a key factor in the collapse of many states. One prominent example is the fall of the Soviet Union. While the USSR was initially built on the strong, albeit authoritarian, leadership of figures like Lenin and Stalin, later leaders such as Brezhnev presided over stagnation, inefficiency, and corruption. The rigidity of Soviet leadership in addressing the economic and political demands of a rapidly changing world, combined with a lack of transparency and adaptability, led to the empire's eventual dissolution in 1991. Another example of leadership failure is found in Venezuela under Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro. Chávez's early policies of wealth redistribution and social programs were initially popular, but the lack of sustainable economic planning, rampant corruption, and over-reliance on oil revenues set the stage for Venezuela's severe economic crisis. Under Maduro, mismanagement worsened, resulting in hyperinflation, mass migration, and widespread poverty, turning one of South America's wealthiest nations into a failed state. Conclusion: governance and leadership are inextricably linked to the rise and fall of nations. Effective governance, driven by strong, visionary leadership, fosters prosperity, stability, and long-term growth. In contrast, poor governance and weak leadership can lead to national decline, economic hardship, and even state failure. By examining both successful empires and failed states, it becomes clear that the quality of governance and leadership is often the decisive factor in determining the fate of nations. As history shows, the ability of leaders to govern wisely and adapt to changing circumstances can either elevate a nation to greatness or condemn it to collapse.